Francis, nice to meet you. Welcome to the show. My name is Jean-Michel, and we're super excited to have you here. And I'm particularly excited to have somebody on that's built so many different AI-powered tools. You've been at quite a few different companies in the product space. And what led you and Sam to start MadKudu in the first place?
Yeah, awesome. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to share a little bit of what I've learned along the way. Led us to start MadKudu is that we were working together at a company that was doing predictive analytics for B2C companies. And so we were well versed in how to use data to power go-to-market, but we realized that internally, we didn't really have any tools to do this. And so it felt like a bit of a gap in the market where like the very large companies would be able to hire, data scientists internally to make sense of all the data and power to go-to-market motions. But most other companies that can't just afford to hire like data science people for go-to-market just didn't really have that ability to mine the data to improve their company performance. So it's kind of what led us to start MadKudu. And then we iterated along the way.
Nice. I noticed from the demo that you are integrating with Salesforce, and that definitely, does that mean that you're really aiming at larger scale enterprises, or is it really more democratizing this kind of sales intelligence?
I think it's a good point. I think this is more when we started a company, it's important to know what segment of the market you're going after. And that Salesforce is really dominant in that kind of mid-market enterprise side of things. So that's why Salesforce is kind of the core CRM that we integrate with, because larger companies are more likely to have a need for data manipulation. When you're a startup, you really don't have that much data, and it's more about just getting started, finding product market fit. The challenge in leveraging data for go-to-market motions really starts showing up once you've hit product market fit and you're starting to scale and you're starting to have to deal with like multiple types of ideal customer profiles, multiple segments, all that stuff. So that's really where we fit in, and not in the gigantic enterprise where, again, you can hire an internal team to do this. And that's where, like, I don't know, like a Dynamics might be more present in the market.
Got you. Yeah. And I've noticed you've worked with some impressive names. Can you share a little bit about how you guys got your first clients?
Absolutely. So we were pretty deliberate about how we went to market, and we've always had this perspective that there are a couple companies that are seen as the cool kids that are doing, that are driving innovation, that are the forerunners on how to do go-to-market. And so in the early days, it was a company called Segment that since then has been acquired by Twilio. So Segment was really interesting because they were kind of a data provider or CDP, and they had a lot of different ideal customer profiles, like on the self-serve side, more startups, and then on the larger side, it could be like an IBM or a Crate and Barrels, like that more B2C model. And so we spent a lot of time and energy acquiring Segment as a customer, and that then led us to have an amazing case study with them. And because a lot of people were trying to figure out how to do things more like Segment, so like the scale-ups wanted to be as successful as Segment, the bigger companies wanted to be cooler, like the younger, more hip company that was the up-and-comer. And so identifying those kind of rising stars and acquiring them was like a huge reason for our success in the early days and how we got exposure to market. And we looked bigger than we were because like people would see us, kind of mixing with a lot of these bigger companies, like cooler companies. So people would come inbound. And today we're, still doing the same. We're very focused on a distribution that is centered around partners. Like Gong is like one of those where they're, an up and comer, everybody's excited and wants to have a similar growth model as them. So having them as a customer and a partner that's able to bundle MadKudu inside their product is something that helps us grow at a pace and a scale that is well beyond what we could, I think, if we were trying to do this direct.
Yeah. So if I were to reiterate, like what it sounds like to me is that you're very strategic about your first initial customers, and that's going to help you basically have the team punch above their weight class, more or less, that you pull in these very exciting customers that already have this buzz around them, and that gets associated with your brand. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly correct. Yeah.
And how did you go about it other than, with great diligence? Did you did you guys use some techniques that we might be aware of, like Dream 100 or specific campaigns that you're willing to share, or is that?
I mean, a lot of it at that level is, very personal selling from the founders. I think there's no, I don't think there is a way around it. Like at the time, I would actually work from the segment office in San Francisco 1 day a week. So it'd actually show up to the office. We identified a champion there that we wanted to make really successful and have our product help him succeed within the organization. And so dedicating a lot of time, energy, roadmap, resources to making that person successful was a core component of this. I think, especially nowadays with like COVID, where everyone went to this kind of remote style work, I think showing up in person just tells a very compelling story to people, because you're there. It's easier to help them to understand what the challenges are.
Obviously serious about it.
Yeah, exactly. And you're generally able to solve problems a lot faster than through 30-minute Zoom sessions once a week.
Of course, yeah. This is a really common theme that I've noticed from successful founders is they just have extreme focus on making those first customers very successful. They're really going after having a nice case study, something they can show and demonstrate. And there's nothing like proof in marketing.
And there's nothing like having a well-regarded company pitch your product. Like that has so much more weight than you pitching your own product. Like people will listen to that and they'll hear the words very differently when you're pronouncing them versus when a customer of yours that is well-regarded in the space is pronouncing the exact same words.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about your approach to, demonstrating and showing ROI for potential customers?
Yeah, that one is interesting and tricky. I think in SMB and like more consumer style products, it's really easy to show very quick ROI. When you're building and deploying a product that requires change management, the ROI might take a little bit more time to surface. And so there's really an interesting element there that I think we can take from challenger sales, where ROI doesn't necessarily need to be like revenue improvements that come from your product. And it can be the simple fact that you're providing value and helping the customer think through the problems that they have and see their strategy through a different angle. Like being a thought partner, and this actually a partner rather than a vendor, is often the kind of ROI that enterprises will be looking for in the early days of the partnership. And so I think trying to rush too quickly to show like monetary ROI can actually burn you, because you're going to have to take some shortcuts. And those shortcuts are really hard to fix after the fact, rather than figuring out how do you orchestrate wins along the way without compromising on the deployment of the solution to sustain long-term value is something important.
When I'm hearing you describe that, I'm imagining these like large integration projects for a new customer that basically you have to map out several months to make sure that, is that right? You're kind of mapping out what they need to see as wins along the way.
Oh yeah. Yes. And I think, if we take MadKudu, right? Like one of the things that we do with MadKudu is we provide, more intelligence to the reps so that they can execute better. That's change management, right? Because now you're exposing reps to new information to feed into their processes. You do not overnight change the way a team of 500 reps works. And that's why you need to figure out, okay, is there a team that we're going to pilot this with? Like, who are maybe the reps or the team that is the most likely to find value in this really quickly, that are more, that are keen to adopt new technology, rather than trying to do we're going to launch this all at once, just
full
roll
initiative
out the seats to everyone and then hope that sales enablement is going to use this. Like you want to have like a plan on, we need to understand what your processes are. We might want to talk to some of the reps to understand like where our challenges. And from that, we're then going to build a roadmap of how to roll this product out, what problems we're going to address, which teams we want to see success with, to build internal case studies to then make it easier to roll out to the rest of the organization.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And how would you say that sales intelligence landscape has, evolved in the last decade? You've been in this space for a while. Where do you see it's come from, and where is it going?
I think it's been pretty wild. I think for the longest time, what people called sales intelligence was really just, are you able to find the right phone number for someone?
Yeah.
And
Can you call them?
yeah, exactly. Like, is this
Intelligence.
is this an actual phone? Yeah. And I think, the last 2 years have probably been where we've seen the biggest change. And I think a lot of that comes from Gen AI and the new capabilities that it unlocks. Like, we went from, years and years of products that were optimized towards extracting information from structured data, like databases, and like, is it the right phone number? How do I extract that from a database? To the ability with LLMs to extract information from large unstructured data, 10K reports, websites, news, Reddit posts, like all that kind of stuff. And so the level of insight and intelligence and automation that we can create from this is dramatically different. And so I think we're seeing a massive change there. And I think we're seeing for the first time something that is truly automating in an intelligent way what the best reps were doing. I think we're going from a world where everything we called sales intelligence was really more about dumb automation, not to ding like, speed dialers or things like that. But that was what intelligence was. Like, I can speed dial 1,000 numbers in an hour and you're just like bang the phone faster. But now we're finally able to better inform the reps so that every message they send or every account plan that they build has baked in it really insightful information about the account they're going after. And I think it's, to some extent, I do feel like we are at a bit of a inflection point where we might go back to, very tailored, very one-to-one sales rather than the full-on mass emailing, mass dialing that we saw in the last, I would say, 10 years. So I think it's really interesting how it's shifted and how the technology has changed that.
As a marketer, I have this feeling that with all we can amplify noise so much, I have this gut sense that sales is going to become more and more important when everyone can just, massively increase the noise level.
I think brand is going to become really important. That's one of my big things, is that I see too many companies that were applying the predictable revenue playbook, where they're saying like the way to generate revenue is hire more BDRs, have them bang more phones, and then that's very predictable. That model doesn't really work anymore. And I think what's been interesting is that...
Why doesn't it? I'm curious to double click on that.
I think because the channels are saturated. The channels are saturated, and a lot of the people who were... It was novel at first, right? When you're the first Take a Gainsight, right? When they started reaching out to CS leaders, nobody else knew who cared about CS. Like, CS was not even a category or a job, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, you want to talk to me? You're not trying to talk to the revenue leader? Yeah, of course, I want to learn about this, and I want to hear about the methodology. But now when you have 25 different CS tools that are pinging you, calling you, like, God, I have no mental bandwidth to figure out like which one is the best. Just like, leave me alone. And ultimately what leads you to buy one tool or another is brand. It's like, is this a brand that I know? The same way that I look at my, like, all the cold emails I receive, I'm more likely to open an email if I know the brand rather than if I don't. And I rarely look at the pitch in the cold email that I'm receiving. So I feel like because the channel is saturated, that predictable revenue playbook doesn't work as well. There's still, of course, some industries where the channels aren't saturated yet, but I think it's going to be quick before, it's going to happen quickly. And so we need to find a better way to do this. And I think brand, plays a core role in that, in making the predictable revenue playbook work, because people are going to be likely to pick up the phone or to want to talk to you or to open the cold email they're receiving.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I'm just, it's reminding me of the cost per lead based on the source, right? Yeah. So brand is the most expensive lead. And does that mean, do you just foresee that, acquiring the top customer, the price is going to go up because of Gen AI and these tools? Or how does that connect in your mind?
I think it's interesting. I always debate that. I don't know that we have a good way today of calculating the cost of a lead based on source. I think attribution is a completely broken system that's never really worked. I'll just share this like as a maybe like other people can try this out. But so we use Gong internally at MadKudu. And one of the things that we ask our reps to do is whenever they talk to a prospect the first time, we'll ask them like, how did you hear about MadKudu? And then because Gong records the call, we then have this kind of like custom script that runs across all of our first conversations, analyzes what the answer of the customer was, and then does attribution that way. And we compare that attribution with the attribution that we're getting from any of the tools that we're using.
Yeah, it's wildly different, right?
So different.
Yeah.
It's incredible because there's a lot. I mean, we've built the company on word of mouth. So we see that word of mouth and brand is still the number one thing that shows up. It's like people know about us for a given problem, and so they reach out. But interestingly, very frequently, they'll search MadKudu or something like that. They click on the first link. It's an ad. And so when we look at the attribution model, it's like, oh, the ads are working really well.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think, even brand, I'm talking about brand maybe more generally than just like.
As a nerd, I hate that you can't get down to what's the exact source, and you can't even ask people, and you still need to remind them. You still need these prompts that you're paying to put in front of them.
Yeah, and it's really hard to figure out what the correlation causation is behind that.
Yes. Yeah. So you talked a lot about brand. What is MadKudu doing right now to build its brand?
I think it's the continuation of what we talked about when we said acquiring customers. Like, we have a strong belief that distribution moats are going to become more and more important in an era where building software is easier than ever.
Yeah.
And so what we are doing is finding distribution partners that have a very well-established and well-regarded brand. That's why I was mentioning like Gong, for example, Outreach. So we're working on like deep partnerships with them so that they will be able to contribute to the distribution of MadKudu. And by doing so, we're kind of attaching our brand to theirs, which again makes us look bigger than what we are, rather than trying to do everything ourselves. And then, so that's one in terms of like, how do we make the brand look bigger? And then the second part is, as founders, we try to, and actually haven't been doing this like very well this past months, but trying to spend a lot of time where our market is, which is for us, it's LinkedIn, and having a clear brand positioning even as people. So what we do, I'm big into AI. I spend a lot of time building AI products, evangelizing how AI can change the way you operate within the organization. So I've launched a podcast on this where we decompose like some of the big AI papers that are coming out in a digestible format, and just posting about this a lot, and like building that brand through repetition so that that's what people associate you with. So there's a bit of that repetition play, and then how do you magnify it? That's where we use the distribution partners.
Makes sense. Yeah. It reminds me of this idea that you're really, as a business, investing in the customers. A big choice is what do you invest in, right? And if you're very strategic, it has a lot of leverage. So I can see that you're clearly doing that. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. And before we wrap up, I'm wondering, can you tell me what is exciting you the most about MadKudu's future?
Many things. I think like we made substantial bets on distribution, so I'm really excited to see how that pans out. Beyond that, I'm a builder. I just love building products, and I feel like we are entering an era where builders that have a business sense are going to be able to ship at a pace never seen before. And I am just so excited to figure out how we do this, and to almost like create a bit of the blueprint for how business-minded people with a bit of a technical background are going to be able to test hypotheses really quickly and solve, problems for people with fairly low efforts. I'm really excited to see how we're going to rebuild a little bit of the internal part of MadKudu of like, how do we do engineering? How do we do support with an AI first approach? I think it's a massive paradigm shift, and I'm excited to be in a position where I get to actually build this.
Yeah, it's an exciting and scary time. Like, everything's going to change in the next 1-2 years.
It is.
We all know
and
it.
It's where like being in a company where we have revenue, we have customers, we have something, so we're not starting from scratch, and like we have some of the unknowns that are already addressed, and it's almost like more about the unknown of like, how do we build it? And so it's really exciting to be able to focus on that unknown of how do we build it? What are the moats that are going to keep on existing? Yeah, it's a fascinating time to be alive.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. Wish you all the best.